Hello, Namaskar and Adab to all my friends from your friend astrologer and guide Irfan, once more with you from your very own channel Astro Assurance. As we move into this year closer to the transits, especially looking at the next month April, where three very important transits are going to come about. One is of course the transit of the Rahu and Ketu axis, with Rahu moving into the Aries sign and Ketu moving in the Libra sign. And we have discussed in that video how Ketu brings about a change in your relationship status when Ketu gets into the Libra sign, and Rahu gives you a new trajectory, a new way of looking at life, a new way of looking at those relationships over which Rahu will be transiting, over which houses Rahu will be transiting. So it's a good transit which is going to happen for some of us surely, with some changes going to come about. For some of us the changes will be very good. For some of us changes may be a little challenging. So I've already made a video on the Rahu and Ketu axis transit which is happening, so please do see that. I've also made the video perspective, the respective ascendants and your placements, not just versus or basis the different zodiac signs, Rahu and Ketu moving into your different houses basis what ascendant you are, but also concerning which placement Rahu and Ketu are in your respective houses. So do see that video, it's a very important one. I've also made a video on this year 2022, how it will turn out for all the ascendants basis putting together all the three transits of Rahu, Ketu, Saturn and Jupiter. Saturn, as we know, is also going to transit into Aquarius and then retrograde back into Capricorn. However, the most awaited transit is that of Jupiter, and the reason it's a very awaited transit of Jupiter is because in the last 5-6 years Jupiter has not been going through some good transits, starting in fact when it was transiting over Virgo, its inimical sign, then over Libra, sign of its arch nemesis which is Venus or Shukracharya, the guru of the opposite team, then Scorpio, not so good a sign though it's friendly to Mars, and then when it was transiting through Sagittarius it was placed, and through the entire transit with Ketu also placed there, so Jupiter couldn't do much, and then transiting through Capricorn, its debilitation sign, and then Aquarius, which is also not so friendly sign for it, because Aquarius is 3rd from its Sagittarius sign and 12th from its Pisces sign. But now that Jupiter is getting into the sign of Pisces, this is a very good beginning for a lot of us, especially concerning those people for whom Jupiter has been a challenge since the last few years, maybe 7 or 8 years for some of us, especially if Jupiter is either debilitated or combusted or retrograde, then it may bring a new set of challenges for a number of people, or they must have already gone through the set of challenges. So this particular transit of Jupiter will be bringing a lot of good news for a lot of people, and so I want to jump into seeing how Jupiter's transit will work out for all the zodiac signs. However, don't look at the transits of Jupiter and Saturn similarly like the transit of Rahu and Ketu, because they are different. Rahu and Ketu transits happen together, so you need to look at the axis of Rahu and Ketu rather than looking at Rahu or Ketu separately. You can look at Rahu and Ketu separately just to look at what is the area that they are activating, or what is the area that Ketu is detaching you from or bringing a change from, or where Rahu is focusing. However, when you look at Rahu and Ketu's transit, you need to look at the axis, entire axis which is transiting. So I have made the transit of Rahu and Ketu keeping in mind the axis transit and not only of Rahu or Ketu. But when we look at the transits of Jupiter or Saturn, they are individual planets. There is no axis which is transiting. So Jupiter and Saturn's transit, you need to look more from which house to which house they are transiting, which houses they rule in your respective ascendant, and where Jupiter is placed in your respective horoscope. These things you need to be looked at first. Second, you need to look at what is the dignity of Jupiter in your horoscope, as I said, whether it is combusted, whether it is debilitated, whether it is retrograde. or whether it is in some good conjunction or it's going through some bad challenges, or if it's in the dusthanas, either in the 6th, 8th or 12th houses respectively. So let's jump into and understand how the transit of Jupiter in the month of April is going to work out for different ascendant, because this is a good transit which is happening. Jupiter will be retrograding back for a couple of months midway through the year, and again will be going direct, so that will also come into effect. So let's find out, let's analyze for different zodiac signs what is Jupiter throwing out for us. Now for Aries ascendant natives, Jupiter will be transiting from your 11th house into your 12th house. This will be a very auspicious transit for Aries ascendant natives, because Jupiter is not only getting into its own sign but also the 12th house, which it is the natural ruler of. But because Jupiter also rules the 9th house, which is a very auspicious house, and then moving into the 12th house, but 4 places from its Mool Trikona sign and second from the 11th house. So this is a very strong gain bringing placement for Aries ascendant natives. This could also trigger foreign travel, higher education, educational qualification in foreign lands, as well as for some people it can also trigger moving into foreign lands or working in foreign lands, or new changes coming about, even working with foreign clients. However, this could for some people, if Jupiter does not place well in your horoscopes, can bring or trigger health challenges or even expenses, where you may end up being large hearted for somebody else, opening out your purse string. So be careful, especially if Jupiter is in bad dignity in your horoscope. For Taurus ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the 8th house through its Mool Trikona sign of Sagittarius, and also rules the 11th house. And Jupiter will be transiting from your 10th house in transit into your 11th house. This is a very strong transit for Jupiter, because it's moving into the 11th house of your wishes and desires coming true, social recognition, social acclaim, forming new connections, forming new relations. However, be a little careful who you form your new relationship with, who you get into your social structure, who you call a new friends, because this can also be proving expensive for you in the long run if you're not careful the kind of people you are getting associated with. This is a good placement of moving away from your place of work into a different stream, into a different department, even a different organization. But for some people it could also be moving away from the place of your work into a different city as well. And because Jupiter is also the ruler of the 8th house here, so this could also mean some obstacles for your wishes and desires coming true, or gains from your social strata, and that's why this can be a little tricky. However, Jupiter going into its own sign and own house of Pisces, this can be a very auspicious placement, especially for Taurus ascendant natives, where career can be triggered, wishes and desires coming true can be triggered. And for those people who are associated with the 8th house areas, career related to finance, to medicine, to occult, to taxation, to metallurgy, to agriculture, all such people, it could be a good transit. For Gemini ascendant natives, Jupiter rules both the 7th house and Jupiter rules the 10th house. So Jupiter rules 2 very strong Kendra houses, and Jupiter will be transiting from a trine house into the Kendra house of Pisces, which it also rules. So this is a very strong and very powerful placement for Jupiter, because Jupiter is moving from a trine house into a Kendra house, which it rules, and also rules another Kendra house, the 7th house. So the 7th lord and the 10th lord getting into the 10th house. So here relationships can be triggered, and synergies, working with people can be triggered. So this can be a good placement for people to create new connections at work, new teams at work, new orientation at work, new role at work, new designation at work, even new growth at work. However, be a little careful that you are reasonable with your attempt to move into a new role, attempt to move into a new designation, attempt to move into a different organization or new organization, because this could trigger high effort, high expenses also. And also, if Jupiter is not in good dignity in your horoscope, then challenges at work also. So slightly tricky placement, but overall it's a very good transit happening into the 10th house. For some people, it could also be a new relationship, especially for women, getting into a relationship with somebody who is connected through your work or connected through somebody you know at work. So this is a good beginning of new relationship, new connection, either in a romantic relationship or it could also be work related. For Cancer ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the 6th house and Jupiter rules the 9th house. So this is also a good placement for Cancer ascendant natives, because Jupiter is moving away from the 8th house of obstacles, of challenges, of issues, and into the 9th house. The 9th house is what it also rules through its natural sign of Sagittarius, its Mool Trikona sign, and it is getting into Pisces. So this is one of the most auspicious and strong placements for Cancer ascendant natives. For Cancer ascendant natives, this could mean long distance travel, finding more meaning, more spirituality also in long distance travel. It could be meeting new people, meeting people from different cultures, different ethnicity, and service, doing service in a long distance travel or even in foreign lands connected very away from your place of birth. And through service and through spirituality, being able to do more, both in terms of service orientation for others but also bringing gains. So this is a very strong gain bringing placement. A lot of things which were obstructed, which were stuck up for you, will be getting activated. So make use of this, but ensure that you take the learning and be open to learning, higher learning this transit will be bringing to you, because then this will be bringing you a lot of gains in the long run. A very powerful transit for Cancer ascendant natives. Please make the most of it. For Leo ascendant natives, Jupiter rules both the 5th house as well as the 8th house, and Jupiter will be transiting from your 7th house into the 8th house. This is a slightly tricky placement for Leo ascendant natives, because while Jupiter rules a trine house, the 5th house, by virtue of ruling Sagittarius sign, however, Jupiter will be moving into the 8th house, though it will be moving into its own sign, but this creates new set of challenges and obstacles. But here Jupiter is prepared, because Jupiter is getting into its own sign of Pisces. So Jupiter will give you new opportunities of learning, finding new meaning, your eyes being open to certain things which you were closeted or which you were not able to fathom, which you are not able to understand, and your eyes opening to new discoveries, even in your relationships or concerning even with your romantic liaisons. For some of you, children may be traveling to a foreign land even for education, and some of you could be doing very well, especially if you are an expert in your field. You could be doing very well in research, very well in your service. You can also get into government contracts, and you will gain from all those things which are related to accounts, to money, to foreign lands, foreign connections, romantic relations, speculative investments. However, be careful if Jupiter is not in very good dignity in your horoscope, because initial first 2-3 months there could be obstacles, there could be issues. For Virgo ascendant natives, this is a very good transit for Jupiter, because firstly Jupiter rules 2 Kendra houses, the 4th house as well as the 7th house. So Jupiter is a very strong yoga karaka for Virgo ascendant natives. So usually Jupiter tends to bring very good results unless Jupiter is in bad dignity, or Jupiter is combusted, or Jupiter is retrograde, or Jupiter is debilitated. If Jupiter is retrograde, then it could mean that initial challenges that you had with your relationships are coming to an end, because Jupiter retrograde means Jupiter is very strong, but Jupiter gives late results in your relationships, late results in stability in your relationship also. So Jupiter is moving from the 6th house of inimical forces, people acting behind your back, people who you may have given loans to and who faltered or who never gave you back, or losing to competition, losing to inimical forces, losing to those people who probably didn't mean so very well for you. At the same time, because Jupiter also rules the 4th house, so establishing a domestic life with your guru, with your Jupiter, or getting into a new partnership, new synergy, new connection for some people, which is connected to either your work area, for those who are in real estate, who are in home decor, who are in vehicles, who are in some area related to land or life's conveniences, or who work out of home, who have a home office. For them, you could get new partnership, even new business partnerships. For women, because Jupiter is not only your 7th lord but is also the Karaka of husband, this is a very, very auspicious new beginning in your relationship, so make the best use of it. However, be careful, because Jupiter will be retrograding end of July and will be retrograde again till November. So from July onwards till November, it will be slightly tricky placement, so be careful of what decisions you make, especially concerning money, lending money related to your house, placement of house, or even establishing your relationship post July to November. But if you have a strong retrograde Jupiter in your horoscope and Jupiter will be retrograding back, then it could bring a new meaning to your relationship. For Libra Ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the 3rd house and Jupiter rules the 6th house, and Jupiter will be transiting from your 5th house into the 6th house. So this triggers new service, this triggers new associations, but this can also trigger new teammates, which could mean a role change, a project change, moving into a different organization, moving into a different team, and then facing initial challenges there. However, being wise, being large-hearted, in the long run you will benefit from this. And with Jupiter also ruling the 3rd house, so initial few months, especially when Jupiter will get retrograde, you may have to do more hard work, you may need to bend your back a little bit, but in the long run this will be very good for you, because Jupiter is moving away from your 5th house of romance, from real estate investment, speculative investments, into the 6th house. So be a little careful that not to delve too much into loans or take loans for business, because Jupiter rules the 3rd house of self-enterprise. Some of you may be inclined to take loans or debts to establish a new business. So be a little careful what romantic relationship you get into, what new associations you get into, but this is a very good break for career. For Scorpio Ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the 2nd house and Jupiter rules the 5th house. So this is a very powerful transit for Scorpio Ascendant natives, because Jupiter will be transiting from your 4th house into your 5th house. 4th house is where Jupiter is also pretty comfortable, because 4th house has Cancer energies. So Jupiter moving into the 5th house, this is an auspicious transit, especially because Jupiter is the Karaka of the 5th house. So very, very strong placement for Scorpio Ascendant natives, getting into new romantic relations, new romantic liaisons. For some people who are wanting to have children, could be the time for good news coming into the family, the advent of a new family member into the family also, or even real estate investment. However, be careful of where you make speculative investments, because 2nd house is the house of income and livelihood, and you could be investing your hard-earned money into some speculative investment. So if Jupiter is strongly placed in your natal horoscope, in your birth horoscope, then it could be a good placement. However, if Jupiter is not very strong in your natal horoscope, in your birth horoscope, then be a little careful of the paperwork that you get into, the deals that you get into, because this could be a challenging placement, especially from a deals perspective. For Sagittarius Ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the Lagna and Jupiter also rules the 4th house. So this is a good placement for Sagittarius Ascendant natives, because both the Lagna Lord and the 4th Lord is transiting away from your 3rd house of effort, of need to put in high effort, and getting into the 4th house. However, Jupiter in the 3rd house means teaching, communication, and now getting into the 4th house. This means you have to learn from the lessons that you have learned over the last 3-4 years, and now be more settled in your mind, as if you have reached home, as if you have arrived at home. So pay more attention to the home front, pay more attention to harmony at home. This is also a good placement for moving into a house, a larger house, maybe even establishing a family, and this is an auspicious placement. So a harbinger of good news for Sagittarius Ascendant natives after many years. This could not only mean real estate investments or getting more material results, establishing a home, buying new car, getting into bigger home, but also establishing a home office for some of you. A very auspicious placement, so please make the best use of it, especially if for Sagittarius people, if Jupiter is strongly placed in your horoscope, good. But for Sagittarius people, even if Jupiter is not in good dignity, you will find that things will start improving from April onwards, because Jupiter has got into the Pisces sign and to the 4th house, where it is in one of its strongest placements. For Capricorn Ascendant native, Jupiter rules both the 12th house and the 3rd house, and transiting from your 2nd house into the 3rd house. This means that Jupiter will be moving from your 2nd house of income into the 3rd house of effort and self-enterprise, which means some of you could put in harder work or harder effort to get more remunerations. Some of you could also get into teaching, some of you could get into social media, some of you could be getting into a role where communication becomes the backbone to earn more money. So focus on your communication, focus on your relationship, because that will add more value and can bring a higher remuneration, higher growth in your earnings. But be careful where you're putting in your effort, because Jupiter rules the 12th house and getting into the 3rd house. So it could mean wastage of effort, wastage of expenses also if you're not careful. So if you're thinking of moving away from your current role, getting into something of your own, self-enterprise, then and spending money to establish it, so be careful how you do it. For those who want to use the social media to earn more money, to look at new avenues, this is the good placement for you, especially if you're some sort of a consultant, advisor, guide, guru, wanting to educate people, wanting to teach people, wanting to share your learning. This is a very, very strong placement, bringing in good gains, especially from foreign lands, higher income. The more you put in effort, the more income you get, the more growth you get. For Aquarius Ascendant natives, Jupiter rules the 11th house and Jupiter also rules the 2nd house. So this is also very strong placement for Aquarius Ascendant natives, because 11th house is the house of wishes and desires. Wishes and desires getting fulfilled from your income, from your remuneration, connected to family, connected to community, moving away from your lagna into the 2nd house, which means whatever you have learned over the last 2-3 years, using that to be able to complete your wishes and desires, especially connected to higher earning, especially connected to more material gains as well. So put in higher effort, focus on your remuneration, your financial gains, on your savings, and this could be a good placement. Just be careful of being reasonable in your wishes and desires and not expecting too much from your social arena, social group. Though social group can also be profitable for you, but be careful of who you are making your friends and associating, because Jupiter is getting into the 2nd house, which it is the Karaka of, so strong placement, but it is getting into the Pisces sign, the 12th house energies. So Jupiter will give you gains over time and not suddenly. So be patient in the first few months and Jupiter will reward you for your patience. For Pisces Ascendant native, this is one of the best placements for Jupiter in transit, because Jupiter will be moving into your lagna while also ruling the 10th house of career, which means that a lot of hard work and effort that you have put in over the last 4 or 5 years, this will all come to bear fruit for you. So high gains, high stature, high designation, high place in society, high standing in society, good respect, everything is coming to you in this transit coming from next month onwards. However, because it is connected to career, which means you need to be able to keep good relationships with your supervisors, with your managers, with authority figures at work, because that will help you in the long run to really gain from this placement of Jupiter into Pisces in the Lagna. This is also the placement of gaining from foreign lands, gaining from foreign associations, even gaining from spiritual connections. Some of you could visit spiritual places also. Some of you could also gain in the professions connected to the 12th house, especially medicine, advising, guiding, counseling, or being an expert in any field. So friends, now that we have seen what will be the results for a lot of us, especially connected to our zodiac signs, where Jupiter transits from the Aquarius sign into the Pisces sign, especially if Jupiter rules the Kendra houses or rules the trine houses for you, it could be a very good gains for you. It could be the entrance of somebody new in your life, somebody who is very auspicious for you, a good relationship for you, a good team for you, a good connection for you, good investment for you, good partnership for you also. So do look for signs of somebody who will be able to bring in that auspiciousness in your life, or an auspicious new beginning, an auspicious new work, an auspicious new partnership, an auspicious new business that you get into. So overall, for people where Jupiter is either the Kendra Lord or the trine house Lord, very good news. For those where Jupiter rules one Dusthana, at least you will find that initially first 2-3 months may be some challenges, some obstacles. However, if you keep your eyes and mind open and are willing to learn from your previous experiences, then Jupiter in the long run will be only giving you gains. So one of the best transits of Jupiter happening in the sign of Pisces after a long time. So please understand the placement of Jupiter in your respective horoscope. Utilize that energy. If you don't understand the placement of Jupiter in your horoscope, don't understand the dignity of Jupiter, then you may miss this transit which is happening, a beginning of very, very auspicious results for you. And if you are not able to make use of this, then it is only you who will be there to blame rather than the zodiac. So friends, like this video, share this video, and if you are looking for a personal consultation from me, please reach out to me at the link given below. Till some other time with some other video, this is your friend astrologer and guide Irfan signing off. Ciao.